next few weeks. Our guest may have one of the best jobs in state government, at least right now. He doesn't have to take the full heat of the governor's office or as a lawmaker in the North Carolina General Assembly, and he gets to use the job as a bully pulpit to affect change and influence on the direction of business and public policy in the Old North State. We welcome back to the program North Carolina Governor Walter Dalton. Governor, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chris. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's good to have you back, sir. You know, when you look at how in Raleigh, with a historic change in political leadership, Governor, new people, and I'm not just talking about at the top of the pyramid, but throughout the organization in the House and the Senate, when you look at leadership, are you encouraged that the leaders have staked out the right things to stake out going into this very difficult budget year?
Well, I hope so, and I think so. I mean, again, what Doug said, jobs has to be the #1 issue. Economic development, hand in glove with that is preserving educational initiatives. So they've got a tough job on their hand. There's a budget deficit right now that they're going to have to fill. That has been faced before. You know, our nation, we've had hard times in the past. If you go back to the last century, you know, that 100 years saw the Great Depression, it saw recessions, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, yet we saw tremendous advances. We've seen tough times before. So we have to get through the tough times, but you have to keep your eye on the future. I finished Roy Williams' book, Hard Work, and in the foreword it says, you know, we need to realize we do not need to be pushed by our problems, but we need to be led by our dreams. And if this group comes in, all the legislators, they need to be focused not only on the present and fixing the budget, but creating jobs and focused on the future.
Doug? Well, let me just follow up on that and ask you really the same comment we made a little bit in the first half of the program. And I understand politics. I spent the first part of my career in retail partisan politics, so I get the promises and what you need to do and what sells. But as you look at the printed sort of agenda, if you will, jobs aren't really high on that, nor are they covering a lot of that territory. You and the governor have reached out across the aisle. You get to work behind the curtain where we all don't see you. Tell me about what you're seeing and what you're hearing, and are you encouraged at all that there is more there about jobs than meets the eye today?
Well, I think certainly from the governor's perspective there is, and I think from the legislature there is, but there's a disagreement perhaps how to get there. You know, we've seen great shifts in 2008. One party seemed to prevail in 2010, another party. I don't think the voting populace has really changed. They're frustrated. They were voting for change both times, but in North Carolina, there are certain things I think the voters do not want to change. We probably have the best community college system in the nation that does great workforce development. If we didn't have that, we would really be hurting this economy. We probably have the best public university system in the nation. I don't think people want to change that. North Carolina was rated #1 in site selection for the best place in America to do business. Forbes had us #3. CNBC had us #2. I don't think they want us to change that. They want to see us preserve those ratings. That's going to drive not only this economy, but the future economy. That's why we have to get through the current problems, but we don't need to do damage to those institutions that have given us those good business ratings and bode well for North Carolina's future.
Do you have any particular concerns along those lines as to what kind of damage could be done? You're right, North Carolina has a fantastic reputation for economic development, do some very good work from a competitor state. It's certainly obvious to us from time to time. But any kinds of specific things that you're worried about that might be hit or cut that affect your ability to conduct economic development the way you've been doing it so effectively?
Yes, I do. Our community college system is well embraced, I think, by all legislators, regardless of party. It's a great system, and that will help get us back on our feet. But our university system is what is laying the foundation for that future economy. If you look at future economies are driven by cutting-edge research and new inventions. In North Carolina, we have a great university system, but we've also invested in research. You're familiar with Dr. Tony Atala. That's Baptist Hospital, a private institution, but we put some state money there because he is working on regenerative medicine. He was on 60 Minutes not long ago. That's going to drive a new economy. It's going to drive pharmaceutical companies coming in. We put a great investment in cancer research. Dr. Victor Zhao, who heads the Duke Health System, said that the money we invested in public institutions for research, he thinks North Carolina can be the epicenter of cancer research. If you cut back on that, yes, you do damage. Our biofuels project is cutting edge. Here in Charlotte, photonics and bioinformation is something that's cutting edge, very important to the banking industry, the health industry, and the insurance industry. It's very secure, transfers information at the speed of light. If you erode that support, you do damage to that future economy. But we've got huge difficulties, huge problems. You've got to get through the current time also. So it is a very challenging time, but keep the eye on the ball and don't damage that.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point, Governor. And here's the thing. Erskine Bowles, as the last president of the UNC system, had made mention as the outgoing president that kind of laid the foundation that maybe at some point soon, that the UNC system might have to close down a campus. Well, that would be a substantial impact in any community, in any of the campuses, or there seems to be some duplication there. So how do you, I guess the question is, where does the political will and the political leadership come from to make those tough calls when education is clearly more than the lion's share of the general budget in North Carolina?
Well, I think there has to be a realization by elected public officials that the constituency wants the same thing, really. They want jobs, they want better schools, they want better roads, and they want lower taxes. And they can do that. They're the voter. They don't have to reconcile that. They don't have to make that balance. The elected leaders have to make that balance. They have to look at those priorities. And it's not an easy task. And they have a Herculean task in front of them. But I think as long as you have that mindset of not only fixing today, but preserving opportunities for tomorrow, and then at least have that perspective so as you go down the road, you do the right balancing act.
With this new leadership in Raleigh, you just cited the phenomenal ratings that North Carolina has gotten from a number of media who look at site selection and economic development. Incentives are a part of that. You can like them, you can not like them, but today that's the way the game is played. Do you see incentives threatened with this new legislative leadership?
It is on one of the listed items on one of the agendas. I think you have to be extremely careful about that. If you're going to recruit jobs within state, if you're going to grow jobs within the state, there's a misperception of the incentives. It is for companies that create jobs. We prefer that it be in-state companies. 80% of incentives go to in-state companies, but we recruit outside. Nobody likes incentives, but as long as the federal government says that's going to be okay for a state to do, we have to be in that game. If you're going to go and buy a truck and you look at a Ford and a GMC and a Toyota, and one says, and then you say, what's your finance package? And this one's $2,500 rebate, this one's 0% financing, and this one says, I don't have a thing to offer you. Then you're out of the game, and you're not going to buy that product. Companies will not expand here. In fact, the threat is that companies would leave here and be enticed outside of our state because of greater incentives if we don't have some type of package. Now, the best incentive we have, I think, in North Carolina is a great workforce, great community college system, but these other types of incentives do come into play. And we don't give cash incentives up front generally. I mean, what we do is say, if you create these number of jobs, then over time, if you prove yourself, then you get a refund, or we'll give you a cash incentive equivalent to some of the taxes you're paying in. So it's a net gain game to the state of North Carolina. But if you eliminate those incentives, you not only hurt our ability to create jobs within and bring jobs from outside, you create the risk that we lose jobs from within that go outside.
What about I'm going to ask you a quick question about your sales force. One of the things that Governor Haley has said in South Carolina is that in tough times, cutting your sales force is not always a wise thing to do. So she wants to increase the budget of the State Department of Commerce. And a few years ago, we sponsored a study along with the State Chamber and the Economic Developers Association in South Carolina and Duke Energy to assess what the needs were in the Department of Commerce. And we had made progress. We had gotten some more money in there, and we had increased our staff, and we were getting more aggressive. Budget cuts have hurt us. What do you see happening in North Carolina with regard to those kinds of folks and whether or not those budgets will be able to be maintained?
Maintained is one thing. Expansion is another. I don't think you'll see expansion anywhere within the budget. And I think every agency is going to take some hits. The argument you just made will be made by every agency, every entity receiving any kind of money. But it's a point well made. if you're going to attract jobs, you have to have the right salesman. Now, I think we have a great salesman in Keith Crisco. I think Keith Crisco and his staff is doing a fantastic job in recruiting business for North Carolina. And, but to give him additional tools, and if that increased money, I don't know if it needs to be staff or it needs to be special tools to be able to recruit. I would love to see him have additional tools. I think in this climate, commerce will take some reduction in money, but he's going to have to be a good manager, as he is. He was a businessman. He will manage that money, and I think still do a great job for North Carolina.
Lieutenant Governor Dalton, you have a progressive point of view. You have an optimistic point of view. What are the creative ways? And since we were talking about education, and I know you have a particular interest in that area, what are the creative ways that we could apply to what we're doing now that would help our education process? Ultimately, better outcomes and a cheaper way to deliver this. Are there ways that are out there that we're just not using?
No, absolutely. We're beginning to use them, and one of the ways is to use technology in a better fashion. North Carolina, actually Governor Hunt had the vision back in '82, before emails, before cell phones, to create an e-learning commission. And in North Carolina, everybody's talking about, let's eliminate wasting government, let's eliminate duplication. Well, we created something called North Carolina REN, North Carolina Research Education Network. We have 100 counties, but they, previous to that, they had 100 local access networks that they maintained. Now we have a technological backbone that connects all 115 of our local schools, school boards, and the schools themselves. We connect all 58 community colleges. We connect our 16 public universities, 30 of our charter schools, and most of our independent colleges. And we deliver services on that research education network. Only 3 people, I think, help maintain it and give support. So it's very, very efficient. We created the North Carolina Virtual Public Schools. We are the second largest virtual public school in the United States. In 2003, we had 3,000 students enrolled. Today, it's 43,000. And we need to continue to grow that. It can be cost efficient. It is a way to save money. It is a way to customize learning. You know, I think in the future you won't necessarily see grade levels as much as attainment, and let's move kids as fast as we can in a responsible way. You can customize programs.
So what's the barrier to deployment for something like that?
Well, we're getting there in North Carolina, and we've received some funding. A lot of it is broadband build-out, and we are very much engaged in broadband build-out, because while we have it at the school building, you need to have that ability sometimes in the homes. Certain kids are not going to be able to afford the computers or the technology. But I think North Carolina definitely is a leader, but we're just scratching the surface. We can save money. Some of the issues you see locally go away when you're talking about online learning. And usually it's what they call blended learning. You'll do some courses strictly online, and then some face-to-face.
I know the slate is still a little blank on how we're going to get to the budget levels. We know they're going to let some taxes expire, et cetera. But to close that budget gap, you know, just like Lewis said, we're all about private sector jobs, but there is going to be significant reductions in state employment. Has anybody done any work on what the cost of that's going to be to the state?
I'm sure the fiscal people are working on that. I think you're right. Now, the one thing, we have a lot of retirees. A lot of our workforce they're baby boomers, and you're going to see thousands of people retiring. So as you look at reduction in force, the first thing you do is try to keep those positions open. Now, a lot of those will be teachers, which ultimately will mean your class sizes go up. But hopefully the current teachers that do want to continue to work, we can keep them there. You need to keep an eye on that class size and make sure it doesn't get too far out of line. But, you know, we're going to have to do more with less people. And, you know, we talk about operating government like a business. And I understand that. I was a business major. I worked in banking before I went back to law school. But the graph is different. When you have a business and the demand comes off, then you lay off some people and you sell out your inventory until the revenues come back. In state government, when the revenues go down, the demand for services goes up. And that's why you see such a very stressful time.